Alright guys, feeling her back with more Valhalla, fuck me, Yakuza 5. I am currently watching Laser's Assassin's Creed ranking video that he released today. Almost at the end. What I think I'm going to do after this is I actually want to rewatch my own video. My own Assassin's Creed ranking. These 2 months, I really want to redo it. It won't be as in-depth as that video is, where I went pretty in-depth on each game. But I would like to redo the list because I do feel like a good chunk of my opinions have changed at this point.
Revelations is crafted from the heart for people who followed these games since the franchise's inception. From the way it handles Ezio's journey and relationship with Sophia, his internal struggles and his letters to Claudia, being able to revisit Altair and seeing how Desmond copes with Brotherhood, along with 16's consciousness continuing to make its stink. Revelations is a game that respects its past and uses it in such a meaningful narrative way. It doesn't try to be a historical theme park ride, it doesn't try to be an epic action RPG. It just tries to be Assassin's Creed. It owns it and has earned the praise that it deserves.
Once Brotherhood.
My number one for now doesn't change. It might never change. Assassin's Creed Brotherhood is a masterpiece. Not only does it tell a meaningful sequel to Ezio Auditore building on what came before, it manages to push the franchise forward in a big way. The nailed side concept of world design in this game. The world has never felt more important than the story told. Every single thing you do in this game has a purpose, from smaller courtesan assignments to Leonardo's war machines. They all aid in a singular focus, which is to take down the Borgia and build up Brotherhood. Ezio's journey across this game is one that is entirely told in a very subtle manner. His relationships with his allies and friends is tested, his resolve also. His ability to lead shines through, and we see Ezio become the mentor of a new brotherhood of assassins that we slowly build up across the game. The game is focused equally on storytelling, open world exploration, side content, and the pure Assassin's Creed. It continues all of the things that I loved about Assassin's Creed 2 whilst introducing new elements into its world. And on top of that, revisiting things presented in Assassin's Creed 1 that were partially missed in Assassin's Creed 2. The concept of the city feeling oppressive, the visual and environmental storytelling used in the different districts of Rome, very Assassin's Creed design and to make Brotherhood feel more whole and focused. They managed to tell various stories across their side content in a way
$3 million?
they add to the main
$3.2 million?
The story of the followers of Romulus across the Romulus 2 seem disconnected, but are actually part of a broader conspiracy, using coded messages in order to give orders from people. Ezio's goal here is to get to the bottom of it, and that then makes sense in why he's doing these things, because it's critical to building up their forces in Rome and helping people break free of Borgia influence. The modern day is easily the best the franchise has ever been, leaving Ezio and Desmond's journey together whilst fleshing out and building up the state of the modern day through the greater narrative regarding Abstergo, but also the more tight-knit group we've come to know. Plenty of optional dialogue allows the player to feel closer to these characters, and the way they structure modern-day missions shows a clear total shift from the action hero that is Ezio to the ragtag group of regular people we see in the modern day. Everything about this game screams Assassin's Creed, from the use of social stealth to the emphasis on parkour routes and advanced movements, especially in tomb-like missions which are used frequently in Brotherhood, assassinations being well-designed and satisfying, and the progression of the player, the city, and the Brotherhood you build feeling incredibly natural. Brotherhood is truly the staple for what makes the perfect Assassin's Creed game, and I can't emphasize that enough. Any AC game moving forward that wants to try to be an Assassin's Creed game should look to Brotherhood for inspiration. Focus, atmosphere, character, and world content are the best we've ever had, and this game will remain for some time my personal favourite Assassin's Creed game. Thanks for watching, I hope you enjoyed my list. I tried my hardest not to go over the same things that I talked about before, so some of the segments might be a bit more concise than maybe my 2019 list, but I didn't want to just repeat myself over and over again. Like I said, let me know your lists in the comments and why. Don't forget to check out some of my other videos that I've mentioned, linked in the description, as they go hand in hand with some of the things I've talked about here. I'm sure I'll continue updating this list to the end of time, but for now, this is where I stand as of 2021.
So video is about 33 minutes long. Yeah, my video was 45 fucking minutes long. Yeah, I really would want to I really want to redo it though. I'm debating over like whether it's worth it to like fuck up the schedule to do it. Because I really want to fucking do it. Alright guys, last episode, or 2 episodes ago, uploaded. Because I canceled out overnight for some fucking reason. Does my video even come up if you look up Assassin's Creed series ranking? Probably not. I feel like there's probably like way too many. Yeah, mine's not even anywhere close up here. If you look up specifically series ranking, my video's there.
Finish your mid phase without pausing. Try YouTube Premium on us. Style uninterrupted.
Seen the new smoking kickin' chicken at Jimmy's, John? Savory chicken smothered in smoky Creole pepper.
Our big pain. From a gameplay perspective, Assassin's... Alright guys, BLM here.
Alright, let's look at this.
Video. In this video, I'll be ranking every single main series game in the Assassin's Creed series up to this point, which includes 11 games ranging from Assassin's Creed 1 to Assassin's Creed Odyssey. Now, most of these games I did replay very recently in preparation of this video, so I do feel like my takes on these are pretty solid at this point. So there is one position where things could flip a little bit, but we'll talk about that a bit later. Now, to give context here, I'm a big Assassin's Creed fan. I've played ever since Issue 1. Mind you, I didn't play it until a couple of years after it came out, but ever since 2009, I've played all the games as they came out, and at this point, I've played every game at least 5 times. My playthroughs of AC 1 and 2 being closer to around 30 times at this point. Now, I will not be talking about any side games, like Liberation or Bloodlines, or any DLCs like Washington or like
Wait, what phrase did I use there? Was it Liberation?
closer to around 30 times at this point.
Oh yeah, it was Liberation.
Or any DLCs like 10 or Washington or like the first
コンサートを中止してほしいという打診を断ってきたばかりだ。
でもコンサートをやればどんな危険が待っているかもわからないんですよ。
そんなことは分かってる。だがそう簡単にやめるわけにもいかないんだよ。あのコンサートには
That's not true at all.
夢が詰まっているからな。
Yeah, I did have Odyssey at the bottom.
とはいえ危ないと分かっているイベントをやれば客にまで被害がいく可能性もある。工業サイドとしては何としても事前にその危険を取り除く必要はあるんだ。
それじゃイベント中止を。
いやダメだ。安易に中止すればはるかちゃんはその時点でパク社長から引き継いだ夢を諦めることになる。夢ってのは手が届く時に掴み取らないとダメなもんだ。次のチャンスはなかなか訪れない。あんたのホームランのようにな。
Did I link in the description?
今やるしかないんだ。
I did.
はるかちゃんに危険な橋を渡らせるわけにはいかない。
それじゃあ
調べるしかないようだな。あの夢の舞台の裏で何が起こっているのか。
The combat is solid, and while I do think it's a watered down version of Origins combat, it is still better than most other combat systems in Assassin's Creed. It is one of the most boring mission structures in the entire series, with most of the sections of the game consisting of talking to a person. That person gives you 3 tedious quests. Usually they feel like side quests, and then once you complete them, you go back to this person, then they give you the quest to kill off the actual antagonist of that section. And this literally happens 9 times through this entire game. The side quests in this game are fine.
Yeah, I see that the top comment is like someone saying that that mission structure you described is present through all of AC2. It's like, but it isn't though. Because like through AC2, well, I mean, it is through some of AC2. I think like the Carnival. And really Venice. Now that I think about it, yeah, it's a lot of Venice. It's like before Venice, it isn't. But then again, I hate fucking Venice too. And I talk about that.
Which are far-reaching, in my opinion, from what Assassin's Creed is. Now, from a narrative perspective, I've always found the family storyline really boring, with very few memorable moments throughout, and most of the pacing being ruined by the aforementioned mission structure. The cultist storyline is not really a storyline. It's just
oh, we can switch between two?
Dumb cutscene of Aspasia at the end. And then we got the Atlantis storyline.
Oh.
The best of the bunch, but that's not saying much. I do think the Gorse is one of the more interesting characters in the game, and while the modern day game is technically better than other recent games, it's still not good. I mean,
Sam just shows up in a suit. I mean, what do you think? Misios here is probably my least favorite protagonist in all of Assassin's Creed. They pretty much just feel like a shell of a character. They have no real...
Oh my god, I really went this long on Odyssey. Well, I guess I went this long on every game, but...
really bad. The side characters are fine, but they do get more screen time than many other games in the series. But most of them either come off as like cartoon characters, or they come off as extremely boring. Overall, Odyssey sucks. While I don't think this is technically the worst game in the series from a general gaming perspective, its lack of connection to the previous titles, boring narrative, and mediocre gameplay makes me rank it as the worst Assassin's Creed game in the series. Now we're moving on to number 10. My second
10 I broke.
Assassin's Creed game is Assassin's Creed Rogue, which is a game that I remember loving when it first came out. After having played it numerous times,
Wait, what?
and having thought about the game's narrative a bit,
Oh, we're trying to... Okay,
it's definitely
there we go.
here in the bottom tier. So let's get started by talking about the open world, which is a worse version of Black Flag. Now, obviously, this takes place in like the New York area instead of the Caribbean, which I do find to be a pretty boring setting. I never loved New York as a setting in Assassin's Creed, though I do think it works better here than it does in AC3. From a gameplay perspective, it's more...
Where's the hotel district?
but with
It's like
minor
up
changes
here,
that don't
right?
really affect much. But it seems like they were just trying to differentiate themselves in any way from
Hotel
Black
district,
Flag.
there we go. It's up
Things like
there.
the puckle gun, air rifle, grenade launcher, and gas mask are new. They don't really add much to the overall experience. The mission structure here is fine. I will say that it is an improvement upon Black Flag's mission structure, which we'll really talk about later. But there are still some tailing missions that are pretty annoying, and also some really tedious, like, clear out this area sort of missions. Side content here is fine as well. It's the same as Black Flag, but with a couple new things like assassin interceptions and prosperity, but there's also less things, like there's no Templar hunts here. Now, from a narrative perspective, Rogue is so meh. It feels like such a generic AC story, but then they switch out the standard sides. In this game, the assassins are bad, the Templars are good, with no real moral grayness that I really love from this series, which is something that I feel like was really needed in this game. The concept of the story is cool, as it serves as a sequel to 4 while also being a prequel to 3 by showing the purge of the Colonial Brotherhood that was mentioned in 3. And while it is cool to see characters from both 3 and 4 appear again in this game, the game just feels like a blatant retcon. Shay as a character is not a terrible protagonist, but his writing is pretty mixed and his voice acting is just as mixed, leading to some very funny one-liners. Most of the other characters here are largely forgettable. Most of the side characters are pretty dull throughout, with the exception of Gist, who's pretty much just a cartoon character. And then, as I said, the returning characters like Achilles, Adewale, and Aetham aren't as good as their original appearances. The modern day in Rogue is completely useless. Obviously, it reuses assets from Black Flag, and while I do think it's cool to see Otto Berg in a main story of a game finally, you do spend most of your time by the Costa, who is pretty annoying for a majority of the game. And the entirety of the modern day just ends up being Otto Berg being a dick, and he wants to send footage of Shay to the assassins just to taunt them. Overall, Rogue has a lot.
Actually, I'm surprised I went this. I forgot I went this much in detail. Actually,
Saga, but the blatant retcons, mediocre story.
because essentially, I essentially wrote like 11 mini reviews. This is essentially what I did. Like where now, if I were to redo it, it would be more general thoughts. I did put AC1 at number 9, and again, that would change now.
Assassin's Creed 1 about 30 times, and while it's probably been the longest amount of time since I last played this game, I feel like I know this game inside and out, and I know it well enough to where I don't really need to play it again to really rank this one. So let's start with the open world, which is really good at the time, being one of the most atmospheric games that I've played up to that point, and each city being pretty solid, with Jerusalem probably being my favorite, but the kingdom sucks. I get why it's a thing in this game, but it's annoying to travel through because it's essentially a giant maze, and it's a pain to navigate around, especially if you're trying to 100% the game, which by the way sucks as well, considering you have to find all the Templars and the flags.
Actually, wait. Let's just rewatch this. I just want to see something here.
And you don't get any reward for doing so, making the side content in this game a big pain. From a gameplay perspective, Assassin's Creed hasn't aged well. Free running is pretty clunky, but to be fair, it's not much worse than...
I forgot, where did I get my AC1 footage from? I didn't pay attention to that. I completely forgot.
System to be one of the best in the series, with later fights requiring much more skill than in some later games through the use of light and heavy attacks. Where this game completely fails, though, is the mission structure. It's appallingly bad. You literally have to do the same thing 9 times over and over again throughout the game, especially whenever you enter a district in the game, which can happen 9 times. You have to do 2 to 3 investigation missions, which at the end of the day, there's only around 4 types of them, so that gets really tedious. Then once you complete those, you go to your bureau leader, kill your target, and then return to the bureau. It gets really repetitive, though I will say that the assassinations themselves are the best part of this game. Like, you have to assassinate them in a multitude of ways, though it is a bit more limited than future games by having a smaller range of assassination moves that can be done, and the fact that you can't swim, but it is fun nonetheless. From a narrative standpoint, I really do love the main narrative of this game. Though it is a bit generic at points, I feel like the Altair storyline here is a great setup to the assassin conflict, and sets up the moral grayness of the groups. And this also moves on to the modern day as well, which I do think is a fantastic setup to the overarching narrative of the series, where conversations with Lucy and Vidic set up a great mysterious tone that's continued until the end of the Desmond saga. Altair as the main protagonist is fine. He has a nice character arc that's fulfilled throughout the course of this story, which is more than I could say for most other protagonists. But his voice acting is pretty dull in this game, leading to him being looked at as a pretty boring character when he really isn't. Outside of Altair, you have Amal Lim and Robert Desaab, who I think are pretty good villains, and then you have Malik, who's a pretty good side character as well, but outside of that, the rest of the cast is pretty forgettable. Overall, AC1 is a game that I have a lot of nostalgia for, but taking that nostalgia away, it simply hasn't aged well. While it's a game that I loved at the time, and while it does still have a relatively strong narrative,
okay, so we just have to walk around for a bit, and then we'll eventually get a phone call. Oh, this is the end of Chapter 2, actually.
Now we're moving on to number 8, which for me is Assassin's Creed.
EA Syndicate. It's probably about right.
Syndicate, which while it is relatively low on this list, it actually was even lower until my last couple playthroughs of it, where I did enjoy the base gameplay more every time I play it, making me move this a bit up.
There we go.
From the open world, I think Victorian London is a fantastic setting and concept. The city of London itself is grand and probably one of my favorite cities in the franchise, but at the end of the day, it just wasn't a good Assassin's Creed city. The city of London is so grand that the parkour becomes an afterthought here. And instead of free running like you normally do, you end up using your rope launcher most of the time, which is completely ridiculous within the Assassin's Creed universe. And speaking of ridiculous, this entire game is ridiculous, making the game feel like a parody of Assassin's Creed instead of an actual main series Assassin's Creed game. The combat here is really dumb, with it just being a whole bunch of button mashing until a quick time event shows up. Push the quick time event and you're able to counter. And the aesthetics of this combat system is even dumber, as it just looks so ridiculous as you're just hitting people so quickly. The mission structure here isn't terrible. There are missions that can get annoying, especially the kidnapping mission. But outside of that, I do feel like the structure here is
I do find it funny that I used to yell into the mic, by the way. I do, like, there are a couple of videos now where like I end up like, I don't think it's like yelling, but it's more so like, it's because like I usually have the mic so close to my mouth. Like there are points where like I probably end up talking too loud and it makes it feel like I'm yelling. But
great here in my opinion. Conquering all the mirrors is really tedious, as you have to do the same type of mission over and over and over again. There's the World War I time anomaly.
I think I'm gonna redo the video. I want to redo the video. I think I'm gonna do it. It'll fuck up the schedule, but fuck it.
I do think this is a cool addition to this game. It allows us to learn more about the future of the Fry twins, while also learning more about the Isu as well. However, the rest of the side content is pretty monotonous and overall pretty forgettable. From a narrative standpoint,
I want to redo the TLC ranking too at some point.
I feel like it's a parody of Assassin's Creed, with characters cracking jokes constantly, and those who don't make jokes just being characters of characters from previous games. And this includes Jacob and Evie as well, who I can never take seriously just due to their strange dialogue. And then we have the villain in Crawford Spirit, who comes off as a really cartoony villain. Now I say all this, but something I will give this game credit for is that the entirety of the game is pretty well acted. All the actors do their job very well here, especially Jacob and Evie. That being said, I do love the narrative structure here.
I see that being said a lot in this video.
We're comprised of Jacob hunting down one of his targets, while he hunts for the Shroud of Eden. Sweden. You know, so through this, he also fixed the mistakes that Jacob makes in the previous sequence. You know, I do like this. At the same time, the narrative is still completely ridiculous. Again, Jacob and Evie are somehow able to take over London, the biggest city in the world at that time, within the course of a year. And really at this point too, this narrative here has nothing to do with the grand scheme of the franchise either, making us feel kind of pointless. The modern day hero would have been decent
ただそいつはあさってのコンサートを開かせに来るはずだから、そうなったら絶対に引っ張れてくれって言われて、それでだから大阪工業系の組員たちがこのビルを警備していたわけね。あんたはパクさんから受け取ってる3億を持って高飛びしようとしていたのか。
Yeah, like that's like it's ridiculous. Like,
この金を返しに行くつもりだったんだ。まだパクさんの墓前に手合わせてもねえからな。よ
く言うぜ。パクさんと交わした契約を破棄して勝也に乗り換えようとしたのはあんただろうが。
だからそれも違
cool.
うん
I
だ
got an ad in my own video. There should be more ads on this video, by the way. I believe there's only 2 ads on a fucking 45-minute video. Like, if this was now, I would put probably 4 instead of 2, but whatever.
一体何の話だ。死んだパクさんが勝也とどんな話をしたって言うんだ。ごまかすのも大概にしろよ。
ごまかしてなんかないよ。かっちゃんが言うんだから間違いない。だってかっちゃんとパクさんはこの20年間ずっと互いに支え合ってやってきた仲なんだよ。誰が何と言おうとかっちゃんがパクさんを裏切るようなことはするはずないって。
はあ、どういうことだ。勝也とパクさんがつながってるだと。
そうだよ。俺はかっちゃんの元マネージャーで、あいつらがこの街でスター目指して頑張ってた頃からの知り合いだ。パクさんもかっちゃんも夢半ば表舞台から去り、
I regret saying that
け
too.
ど以来ずっとあの二人は親友のはずだよ。
Why do you say it like that? Wait, how is there still 30 minutes of this video left? When I'm almost halfway through this.
当時パクさんが付き合っていた男だ。確か真島とかいう名前だったっけかな。ちょうどその写真
Why did I use that footage? I used footage of me getting stuck on the fucking thing.
かっちゃんは引退を余儀なくされた。そのピンチを救ったのもパクさんとその真島という男だよ。真島さん、アクション俳優だったかっちゃんがこの業界で生きていくには裏方に回るしかなかった。だが強豪をひしめく東京で事務所を立ち上げるなんてことは容易にできない。それで当時芸能系事務所が少なかった大阪に渡り、現地の極道連中と話し合い、大阪芸能の立ち上げを世話したのはその団体の男だよ。その後、真島とパクさんは別れてしまった。結局、パクさんもかっちゃんの上を大阪に渡り、芸能事務所を立ち上げた。だが、それも全部あの頃の夢、お互いがスターになるという夢を叶えるために手を取り合って頑張っていくためだったんだ。
and goes through many struggles throughout the game, only for him to fail his ultimate goal at the very end. My biggest problem with him is the fact that through the main story, he doesn't really develop from these events. Now, there was an epilogue speech that really highlights his development and really rounds him out as a character, but for some reason it was cut. Though it is actually in the audiobook, you can find it on YouTube. Watch it. It's really good. Most of the side characters in this game are pretty forgettable and annoying, though there are characters like Ethan and Achilles I really do like, and then I don't mind Charles Lee as a villain. Now, for the modern day, most people look at this as the best modern day in the series. However, the way I look at it is I look at it as a lot of wasted potential. It's pretty common in Assassin's Creed. While it is great to see Desmond as an assassin and his return to Abstergo being a great way to round out his story, I do feel like that section was really rushed. And through that, they kind of ruined Daniel Cross's character with Desmond just
真島って男もパクさんとは連絡を取り合ってないみたいだが、カッチャとは今も頻繁に連絡取ってるみたいだよ。カッチャン、東京に来るたびに真島さんのとこを訪ねてたみたいだから。
where they really rushed the ending there, making the moment feel less meaningful than it really should have. Overall, AC3 is a tough game for me to rank because I think it does certain things really
I had
well.
Unity about 3.
Like the relationship between Connor and Ethan, and most of the side
I think that would change now, if I'm being honest. I don't know, it's tough. I think I don't know. I think the ranking is tough right now, actually.
だって俺はかっちゃんにあさってのコンサートを1日後ろにずらしてほしいとしか言われてないけど、なんかあさってじゃあ新曲の振り付けが間に合わないからとか言ってたけどさ。
Obviously, it did have a terrible launch that painted this game in a more negative light than it deserves, especially at this current point.
Okay, so that's it for chapter 2.
Version, which, while not flawless, definitely runs a lot better.
We're only... Oh, we're 25 minutes in now.
This is probably the most immersive Assassin's Creed game to date,
Still
with the
sit
city
there.
of Paris feeling alive with its massive crowds. From a gameplay perspective, this is the first game where they had the free run up, free run down system, which is great when it works, especially when descending, but it does make climbing a bit clunkier than it used to be.
I forgot. Well, I had the footage of, like, just Arno spazzing out across the fucking building.
Instead of being able to freely maneuver around the area. The combat in this game is one of my favorites in the series, as I feel like it's a perfect mix of difficulty and skill, while still also being aesthetically pleasing. Now, the range combat in this game is something I never really cared for, and also the fact that your opponents really use range combat a lot. It kind of harpens my opinion of the overall combat system, as whenever you're
I use harpin, which isn't a word.
Run out of medicine.
I remember there was a point where, like, I thought harpins was a word for the longest time. And, like, I just, like, naturally said it, and it's like I realized, like, afterwards, like, harpins isn't a word.
Before you're able to assassinate your target. The side content here is good. The
So I think this was during that time.
And are generally pretty fun, but everything else seems pretty excessive. There are a bunch of collectibles throughout this game, like there are many other AC games. From a narrative perspective, I like Unity much more than other people, and I feel like your enjoyment of the narrative really comes down to whether or not you like the relationship between Arno and Elise. And that's really because they're the main center point of this.
Yeah, I would have Unity lower now.
Arno's actions throughout the entire game are essentially just him trying to win back Elise. The reason he joins the Assassins and he hunts down Jermaine
今回の T セットのメジャーデビューコンサートは急遽決定したものです。関西のテレビ局で放映されていたプリンセスリーグの決勝で活躍したダイムチェアさん所属の沢村遥さんが日本ドームでのメジャーデビューコンサートを予定していたのですが、その都合がつかなくなってしまったことから急遽決勝で対戦した T セットが代わりにコンサートをする運びとなりました。
本当に緊急なコンサート開催になると。
そういうことになりますね。ですが T セットの2人はすでにとある著名の先生から楽曲提供を受けメジャーデビューする予定になってましたからコンサートの開催自体に問題はありません。私ども大阪芸能としては、これをラッキーなきっかけとして沢村遥さんには申し訳ないんですが、というわけで
How do I talk about the top 5 for 23 minutes?
But the game does have some major flaws. It has some pretty clunky free running. It has a lot of technical glitches. It has a mixed narrative. So that's why it plays Unity here at the bottom of my middle tier. Now we're moving on to number 5, is Assassin's Creed 2, which I know this is a bit controversial, as this is looked at as one of the best games in the series. But for me, actually, 2 and 3 is pretty close. And while I loved 2 at the time, if you take away the nostalgia from the game, it's probably pretty mediocre story. I think the Italian Renaissance was a perfect setting here, especially in contrast to AC1, where AC2 is a more jovial game, has a much more lively open world, unlike AC1, which is dark, cold, and pretty depressing. And I feel like AC2's open world really benefited from this SEO collection, which made the colors much more vibrant. The gameplay here, though, hasn't aged as well as future AC games, where the parkour is pretty clunky, especially before you get the climb lead, and the combat itself is very, very slow, as you spend most of your time waiting for your enemies to attack you so that you can counter them as the guards block most of your standard attacks. The mission structure is a massive flaw of AC2, where I do actually really like the mission structure of the first half of the game.
Wait. This fucking comment, the top comment on this fucking video, is talking about how I'm upset at the mission structure in Odyssey, but AC2 has the same thing. I fucking mentioned it in AC2, motherfucker.
Sequence 7 is one of the biggest slogs in any Assassin's Creed game, where it's filled with escorting missions and sections where you have to clear out an area of guards. And the sequence takes about an hour to an hour and a half, which makes it one of the longest sequences in the game.
Yeah, you know, that's why I don't read comments. Because I'll just be too bothered by like so many fucking comments, like how many fucking idiots there are.
Dumb Carnivale minigames, including the one
Oh shit, did I mean do that?
Flag, which is really dumb because really all you're doing is running to the edge of a rooftop and jumping off the rooftop, landing on top of the flag, and racing back. Now this back half also has...
The fact that I can bother to explain the fucking Carnival thing in this video is fucking ridiculous.
However, the quality of them is very bad. While there is one where you're following Templars and you actually get to hear their plans and everything, that one's not too bad. But there's one where you're literally just following around the guy that has the apple for a good 15
Wait, it's just Kiryu and Seijima?
So
Well, we're gonna pick Kiryu. Oh, fuck
now let's talk
off.
about the side content in the game, which outside of the Subject 16 glyphs and tombs, I don't feel like it's that good. We got short quests like races, beat 'em up events, and assassination contracts, which are pretty boring. But as I said, like, the tombs are really good, they're really fun. Though they can get annoying if you start failing at them. It's one of these things where it's like, as long as you don't mess it up, it's really fun. But if you mess it up, it starts to get really tedious. The narrative basically
okay, we're gonna go to save point
showing the
and...
development of their character in Ezio, also having memorable villains like Rodrigo
Okay, so we're going all the way to
also
fucking...
having a
Okay.
lot of mysteries surrounding the Prophet and the First Civilization. I remember seeing the ending of 2 for the first time, and my mind was completely blown. To see Minerva give a message to Desmond through Ezio was such a great moment for me. Obviously, Ezio is a great protagonist, but I do think Ezio's first outing here isn't as solid as certain other protagonists in the series. However, as a whole, mixing in the next 2 games, that definitely makes Ezio probably the best character in the series. From a modern day standpoint, I think this game does a really good job of progressing the mysterious tone that came from Assassin's Creed 1, while expanding it through the lore that was given.
It's over here, right? Oh fuck, I didn't even see that guy.
Also having the modern day connect to the Ancestor storyline by having Desmond being trained by the reading effect. Overall, I do think people look at this game with rose-colored glasses, and after taking out the nostalgia from the game, this game is pretty overrated compared to most other games in the series, even from someone who's played it back in the day. But the narrative and the modern day is still pretty strong in this game, and that's why I have this ranked at number 5. Now we're moving on to number 4,
Where's Revelations?
the top game in my middle tier.
I think Revelations for me has gone up.
Revelations, which is a game that's really grown on me over time, as I didn't really care for it when it first came out. But since then, I really respect the narrative and the philosophy displayed throughout the entire game. And this is a game that actually...
I just laughed at that, but like I'm not laughing at the video, I'm laughing at, like I tried to punch the guy, but like he just punched me before. I don't know why I laughed at that, that was just like ridiculous, I laughed at that, but
Though they did have to add some non-existent buildings and have other exaggerated buildings, just
this guy.
Constantinople due to that mentioned real life. Gameplay here is more of the same from Brotherhood, but with minor changes. I really like the hook blade. It makes the free running a lot quicker without being ridiculous.
Well, what am I
like
using? Wait.
Syndicate. The combat is insane.
You know what?
For some reason, they decided to add slow-mo when you counterattack, and to be honest, it's really distracting. I actually really don't like it. I never liked the focus on bombs that they put in this game, as I really used them in the game, and the graphics just kind of went over my head. I hated the tower defense sections in this game, though they don't happen to...
I think that's the problem with Revelations. Like, Revelations has one of the best narratives, if not the best narrative in the entire series, but it's like harmed by all these like little things.
Making you have to complete them once again or go through a tower defense section.
But yeah, well, we're gonna end here. Next episode, continue on. For now, thank you for watching.